Michael Barnes, who is an attorney who has a lot of experience in cases involving prescription drugs. When I first heard that this Lopez guy had disappeared to Thailand, I thought, he might be worried about being prosecuted. Because I would assume, Michael, that there's got to be a rule against sending huge quantities of Propofol to some woman's house in Santa Monica. It's only supposed to be used in a surgical setting. If indeed this pharmacy owner sent a whole bunch of Propofol to Dr. Conrad Murray's girlfriend, did he break the law, do you think?
I think it'll depend on whether or not he knew that he was sending it just for one particular patient. And from what I understand in reading news reports about this particular pharmacist, he believed, and I think it was because Conrad Murray actually expressly told him, that this was going to be for an actual clinic for a number of patients. And that creates a whole different scenario in terms of the responsibility of the pharmacist. And another point that we should make note of is that the DEA did, after the death of Michael Jackson, raid this pharmacy and has the information related to these prescriptions, so presumably there would have been charges by now if there were any violations of federal law.
Yeah, and I have to ask, if Dr. Conrad Murray indeed lied to the pharmacist from whom he got the Propofol about what he was doing with it and saying he had a clinic, I would think that that would be Exhibit A for the prosecution.
Let's bring in Michael C. Barnes, attorney and drug policy advisor. Michael Barnes, you know, it's interesting because you talk about the standard of care. That's so critical here. But was simply leaving Michael Jackson alone with Propofol enough to have Murray convicted of involuntary manslaughter?
Well, that one particular issue of leaving him alone probably would be enough, but there are so many more additional facts that support that this doctor was simply negligent in his behavior. He was starting as simply as trying to practice anesthesia as a cardiologist. You know, what likely would have been a better approach for him would be to try to coordinate care with specialists. Just all of the facts are adding up to 17 or more incidents that were clearly negligent, and it's going to be very interesting to see how these facts come out and whether they're going to be different from what was initially told to investigators.
Bring in Michael Barnes, who is an attorney who's also an expert on prescription medications and medical medications in general. Here's my question to you, Michael. The defense is saying, well, Michael Jackson gave himself the crucial amount of Propofol that put him over the top and killed him, even though they admit that Dr. Conrad Murray gave him some. Now, well, everybody's saying you can't drink Propofol and kill yourself. It doesn't work that way. But is it possible that there was a catheter or something already attached to Michael Jackson that if he woke up while Dr. Conrad Murray was out of the room, he could have just gone and given himself a little bit more?
It's possible, but if they're going to stick with the defense is going to stick with the facts, according to what Murray said to investigators, it's not going to work for them because he said that he put Michael Jackson under, that Michael Jackson was unconscious due to the anesthesia Propofol, and then he went out to make a 2-minute call. Comes back 2 minutes later, and Michael Jackson is dead. But you cannot in 2 minutes wake up out of anesthesia, get your bearings, go and inject yourself with Propofol, lie back down neatly, and then die to a point where you can't be resuscitated all within 2 minutes. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you know, you bring up a great point because that Propofol would have knocked him out. How can he inject that Propofol at that point?
Well, I have a follow-up because I was sort of surprised, having had Propofol myself for surgery, that the amount that Dr. Conrad Murray claims that he gave Michael Jackson would only knock you out for 3 to 5 minutes. Can you address that, Michael Barnes?
Well, again, it's really disconcerting that he would leave the room for 2 of those 3 to 5 minutes if he only gave him that small amount of the medication. And so if indeed he left the room and Michael Jackson woke up, then that in and of itself is negligent behavior in that he left him unsupervised, knowing that he might have shown signs of drug dependence, and not addiction, by the way, dependence. And then, you know, he leaves the room with these vials of Propofol already presumably hooked up to this makeshift IV. All of it is just really shady behavior, and I don't believe that he was a bad person. I believe the people from his local church who said he was a good person, that might have been why he couldn't say no to Michael Jackson.
But let me say this very quickly. You say, oh, nobody's going to believe this idea that yeah, people believe a lot of things in the jury room. Look at the